Thanks, Zoe. Well, welcome, folk, to the first quarterly meeting for the new year. But it's beyond being able to say Happy New Year because everybody's been back at work for a hang of a long time. So it's great to see everybody. And we have a full agenda, which we'll come back to as we go through it. But Ken, I just wonder if you could lead us, please, in our opening barricade.
Yes, I certainly can. Yeah. E te atua kaharawa, homai kia mātou te kaha. Ke te whai atu I ngā huarahi tika, mō tēnei hui, I tēnei rā, tihe mō ora.
Thank you, Ken. That's great. Okay, we have apologies for lateness from Susan and indeed Steph. I think they're meeting a whole group of people, I think up to about 100. So they need to do that today. So they will be with us later in the day. I think otherwise we've got a full muster. Folk are able to stay the length of the distance. So I've indicated potentially, if we could treat this as an apology, that I will have to retire from the meeting reasonably closely after 3 o'clock for another commitment. So with that, I'll move from the chair that we sustain the apologies. Thank you, Andrew. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Disclosure of members' interests. Anything folk need to disclose as we go through this? Carol, I'm going to do it on your behalf as well, but I just think you should recognise Carol and I also are independents on Hamilton. We are talking Waikato Waters, and I appreciate that doesn't directly have a role with Hamilton, but I think it's worthwhile just noting that as an existing arrangement. I don't believe, for me personally, I suspect for you either, Carol, and you can affirm that it should in any way impair our ability to be involved. You're okay with that? Brilliant. As long as the rest of everybody else is as well. I haven't been informed of any late items, and we have the meeting as it stands proposed to do it. If I have to obviously shoot through, I've asked Roger clearly as our deputy to take over the chair. So I'll move from the chair that we confirm the order of the meeting as stated. Thank you, Lou. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. We have the minutes of our last meeting, 11 December. I'll move from the chair there, true and correct record. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Roger. Any accuracy, correctness or issues? Pretty darn good. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Thanks for that. Right, we're into the substantive stuff. Ginny, George, into a very comprehensive and big report, the quarterly risk management report. We're in your hands, please.
I'll take the report as read and wish to highlight the following. We've included a number of levels in the report: global risk trends, Council's risk profile, and what is happening in the operational environment to continually improve risk management practices. In the report information, we've included information from the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report that came out last month, or January, which provides important context information and has been summarised. A copy of the full report has been added to Diligent for your reference, for those of you that want to refer to it. The geopolitical and geo-economic environment is an emerging risk for Council and needs a watching brief in regard to any effects in the long term. Staff have also recommended an upward trend for top risk 8 for the wider business context as a result, and there's, tariff wars and such. There's also a new emerging risk about the security of the natural gas supply, which we became aware of later last year. The pool's being our major user, and Brad's here to help answer any questions, and Adele. The risk to financial strategy and affordability, previously trending upward, is expected to flatten with the approval of the new covenant by LGFA, and we're just awaiting the formal letter. We're also recommending that top risk 2 has flattened, given we're nearing the final quarter for this financial year and delivery is well on track. Our KRI reporting has been updated to include the enhanced financial reporting presented to Council on 26th of February. The status of the KRIs do not indicate at this stage any additional actions required over and above what is in place or planned, and the interdependency of timeline risks between the LTP and waters will be discussed in detail during agenda item 12. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Ginny. That's really, really helpful. So folk, I've got a few questions, but I'll open it up first to other folk. They got questions. Leah, Andrew, you have? Oh, okay. You folk got questions? Yeah, Carol.
Just a quick one with the gas supply and the costs rising, that's all been built into sort of future budgets and things. Probably a question for you, Ken.
I'll get, sorry, we'll just get Brad to answer any questions.
Hey, Brad, how are you? Welcome to the meeting. I'm Bruce Robertson, the Independent Chair, and actually the questioner is Carol, my fellow independent, so you may not have met us, and if I have met you, apologies that I had to be told your name. I think you'll probably know the rest of the people in the room. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Bruce and Carol. So just by way of introduction for Carol, because I have met you once, Bruce, but it's okay, is I'm the Community Services Manager, so I look after parks, pools, libraries, museum and heritage. So as it built into future budgets, we've done our best estimate for inclusion in the draft 25 to 34 long-term plan. What we don't have certainty on at the moment is what that next contract will be. So our current contract is for 12 months, which runs out in September 2025. And we have no certainty at this point in terms of A, whether we'll get a contract, and then B, what those prices may be. Of the estimates that we've received from our support around, we use Martin Lynch for some of our energy estimates and tracking. He's suggesting that while the estimate was sort of 96% on the previous contract, it'll be about another 50% around that mark. So we've tried to incorporate that for the next budget, but there is still a lot of uncertainty there.
It probably, Brad, leads to is there a longer term proposition or solution here?
Yeah, what we're looking at, again, Martin Lynch is doing a piece of work for us on a feasibility of converting our gas boilers to hot water heat pumps. So the early numbers on the back of the envelope look promising, that there will be a big saving there in both cost and energy use. We're looking at, in the vicinity, once it's all installed, of about $500,000 project for the Te Amuru Event Centre. That's the first one he's looking at. We also got the Pere Aquatic Centre as well, which is not part of his scope at the moment. But yeah, the intention would be that they would take almost all current gas usage out of that site, and the gas boiler would remain as a backup. Gas boilers have the best level of service in terms of bringing the heat back up to a pool when there's a closure and things like that. So yeah, that would be on standby. But currently there's an estimated reduction of gas usage by 80%, and an estimate at this stage of 85K per year on energy costs, and 360 tonnes of carbon emission savings each year as well on that, with a overall energy use drop of 1.5 million kilowatts per hour of gas. So some good numbers there in terms of savings. So a big investment up front, but we should hopefully over the next estimated 5 years, get that cost back by operational savings. So that's not in any current draft budgets. So once we get this feasibility with some more surety behind the numbers, we'll be building a business case to put into the next long-term plan and or annual plan. But as we know, finances are pretty tight for annual plan amendments. So yes.
No, that's not a joke either. Yeah, I get it.
So yeah, look, we've got a plan in place, but in terms of timeframes, that's our risk, is that funding to install that, if it does come to fruition, we still September 2025 is going to be well on us before we get any certainty of cost in our budgets.
Well, the numbers make it look like a no-brainer, but I appreciate you've still got to do the hard yards. Yes, Roger.
Yeah, Brad, that's really interesting, that conversion. If you were to make the decision, what would be the lead time to implementation and operation from decision? Just I know you can only give us an approximate, but it would be
Yeah,
interesting.
look, I would be, it'd be a wild guess, sorry, Roger.
All right.
I would be thinking we could probably do that in 12 months, I'd like to think, because we'd bring in the heat pumps as a built unit and then it'd just be converting that in place. So we'd have to also work in with the Waipa Community Facilities Trust in terms of
Yep.
any closures that they might have for pools and things and try and make it more efficient in terms of disruption for our users. So yeah, I would hopefully bring that back in a nice tidy package of the feasibility once we know some more
But
details.
actually not that long.
I wouldn't think so, but yeah, as
Good. That's all right.
mm.
Yes. Gives
I
an
love
idea.
I love the green approach as well too, It makes one of those cases where the green approach actually sounds darn sustainable. So that's appreciative. Oh, you seem to, sorry.
Thanks. So I take it energy production, solar panels is not part of that brief to Martin? No.
No, that's right. We're just looking at removing those gas boilers and bringing on an electricity supply. So yes, and so we know that we've got enough power capacity down at Te Awamutu Event Centre to do that. Because one of the considerations was, well, do we need another transformer or something like that down there? But no, we've got sufficient capacity to run those models down there.
Thank you for that. And Ginny, thank you for raising that and you being here, Brad. As you say, very much raised as an emerging issue. And great to have it. It's also good in this case to know what the plan is. And that sounds really positive, Brad. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Our main concern is that, September 2025 is upon us really quick. And the Ministry for Business and MB, they were quite quick in terms of the communication last time around. We had to provide information quite quickly, and then the changes came through quite quickly as well. So when hopefully we'll get some early steer from them, but based off previous opportunities, it was quite late in the piece.
Yeah, go Lou.
Quickly through the chair. Brad, is this Cambridge doesn't actually utilise gas at all, does it? Or does it? What I'm asking here is we don't have a liability sitting to one side here that is, we have to actually modify Cambridge as well at some time in the future.
Look, I might stand corrected here, but I believe that there is some sort of gas supply at Cambridge as well. But we're just focused on Te Awamutu at the current time, just as a bit of a pilot.
But as I say, for resilience, we need to actually consider that there would be another pool that would have this cost. So we really should be, when we're buying, economy of scale or whatever we do, probably best to look at both sides. Okay.
Agreed.
Thanks, Lou. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. Do we have other questions over Ginny's report? Thank you, Ginny, for raising the issue around the broader world risk environment, if I can call it that. That's really useful, and my mind did go to particularly the future risks around our supply chains. I mean, look, is it my role to be a black hat? Or it probably is to some extent, but I do get worried about actually where this could be going. And we've already seen what a pandemic does to supply chains in terms of rates of shipping and what have you. And it does worry. Now, this is where I went to this here, and I thought, I wonder how this might be affecting some of my strategic risks. Have we thought about anything that we could or should be doing? Now, I'm positing that supply chain is a potential risk. I'm not saying it is an actual risk. Is that in any way driving our behaviour inside council from a project and a contract management perspective at this stage? Well, actually, or an operation and maintenance side, by the way, as well.
No, not at this stage in terms of the geopolitical environment. I guess it's very early stages and an emerging risk. I mean, we follow good procurement practices. There's a significant forward planning in regards to capital works in the supply chain. So those practices continue, and then it's really a watch and brief.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, that's good. Well, I mean, the early monitoring is, it's a good sign that that's happening. And I take your point around the, trying to manage the purchasing approach, which is really what I was probably getting at. Jenny, the climate change and the organisational risk which you've facilitated with Tonkin and Taylor, just tell me a bit more about that, please. Page, what have we got? 7. Yeah.
So Tonkin and Taylor came in and met with subject matter experts in each of our various activities like transportation, and there was also a strategy and governance stream, which was more around procurement and wider risks. They used the scenarios from the Ministry for Environment. So we took current state, a worst case scenario, and a mid-road one. Haven's much more the expert in this place than I am, even though I've been involved. And then we looked at what were the risks for us as an organisation, and particularly around reputation, levels of service, delivery, and completed basically from the workshops. We then went through further workshops that rated all the risks. So based on, it's a different way of rating risk because it looks at your exposure as well as certainty, but we used our consequence matrix. The full climate risk assessment will be going to, it's being discussed at Exec tomorrow, and is going to the Sustainability and Climate Change Subcommittee, and Tonkin and Taylor will be presenting. I'm looking at Mike because Mike knows quite a bit about this.
Yeah, but you answered that far better than I could have, so.
Yeah, and basically from there, the next steps will be to take those risks and apply them to our activity management plans, because that will drive the mitigations. And there's a thing called a tipping point.
Yeah.
So some of the risks we will look for indicators that they will then tell us we need to start looking at mitigation. So particularly for Waipa, we're not worried about so much coastal inundation, but we have peat, we have drought, we have fire. There's a lot of other risks. And we've also looked at it, Lou, you'll be interested to know, from the hazard mapping as well, and they've taken regional council. There's actually some quite smart things that they're looking at doing in terms of overlaying with geospatial information, so we can get more of an understanding. And this is the next phase, which will be in the next financial year, is then to actually have a look at what the community climate change risk assessment is. So, yeah.
Well, it's two things.
Quite a comprehensive process.
One that just tweaked my interest, peat, which is good for whiskey, of course, but it's a joke. I'm not an alcoholic here. Peat, why is that a climate change risk? What, that it would burn?
Burning, but also it shrinks with the drought, and that has huge impacts on our roads and bridges and
Gotcha.
that infrastructure. And it's already happening, basically.
So here's the case, guys, where you have to, everybody's hold up this, you've got this, haven't you? Lou, you got it? Mike, you know, you've got it there, right here? Okay. So we are seeing current residual risk very high, and our appetite is high. So what does high say? We prefer safe options that have a low degree of residual risk for limited uncertainty. We want controls adequately designed. We'll accept risks if limited and heavily outweighed by potential benefit. We prefer to avoid trade-offs. That's where we want to be, but we're not there. Are we happy with the work that's being done? Does it sound right? Mike, you're leading.
Yes, I'm chair of the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, and a lot of the reason why we're sitting outside of risk appetite currently is because we haven't completed the the governance work and the climate change strategy and so on.
Yeah.
So exactly what Jenny's just been talking about is in train, and once that's completed, I suspect that that risk rating will come down into appetite. That's not my decision to make, but I'd be expecting that's where we'll get to. So yeah, I think it's an accurate representation of where we're at.
Brilliant.
And I look forward to that improving over the
Yeah.
next, this calendar year probably.
The results of this will inform our AIMS, which will help build our resilience and with other things that are going on, like responding to the gas risk, we're
No, that's good. And I thank you for that. I
tracking.
yeah, what you say certainly, and Mike, you say certainly gives me a lot of confidence that actually for something that's outside risk, we are doing something that's actually very constructive and will enable us to reassess that risk with a view we're better off, which probably brings it with an appetite. So that's a good one. Okay, anything else that got people's mind? Can I just check, Ken? I was interested. The LGFA covenant obviously is a bit of a relief. From an insurance perspective, do we anticipate in our debt levels a headroom to meet unexpected disaster insurance type costs? And if so, how much is it that we would normally allow for? If we're at 350, how much would we go up to?
Yeah, so look, we don't formally allow for that, but look, that was one of the key things in terms of actually looking for the bespoke covenant was that we would we would actually have a buffer there. And in fact, in the financial strategy, what we say, and in fact what we have modelled is and it just takes us a little while to get there, but we've allowed for a buffer of 15% of our available debt limit to keep that as a buffer, and that is very much on the basis that if anything unexpected comes up, as it would in a in a natural disaster situation, that we'd have some cover there. But yeah, we provide more for the buffer rather than for a specific amount in regard to an insurance reserve or anything like that.
No, thank you for that.
Bruce, could I just ask for clarification of your question? Well, ask it again. I didn't quite understand what you're getting at.
So
Because we have insurance, we have the government, the 60-40 rule or whatever.
Yep.
What are you getting at? Are you getting at a
40?
Yeah, okay.
How do you fund the 40?
Well, yeah, okay.
So the 40, we basically we look to cover that through insurance arrangements, primarily. Yes, I mean there are liquidity considerations. So debt headroom is certainly helpful in terms of that liquidity. But look, it's essentially we look to cover the 40 through insurance arrangements.
You do, that's right. Sorry, I'm just looking back to our insurance strategy. So look, it just depends what your insurance arrangements are. Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. And the 40 is always important because, look, in disaster, there's always various arrangements. But if you look at, say, the lessons out of Cyclone Gabrielle, it's also the hidden liabilities that suddenly occur. So with, I'm not saying this is government policy, but if you look at the precedent of red sticker homes in Auckland and Gisborne and the Hawke's Bay, all of a sudden you find yourself having to stump up for half the buyout. And there's a lot of other hidden costs. So it's been a strategy of local authorities to have the so-called headroom in their debt capacity, essentially. And fair point, Ken, you're saying liquidity as much as anything else to cover these. You won't get insurance on having to buy out a red sticker home. Correct. As far as I know, well, probably you can, but it probably would be prohibitive, I think, Ken. So the concept, and I mean, you're saying you've got a 15% allowance, is actually is probably reasonably important. So what it really means is that 350 is important. It is but when you start to look at then how that factors into your financial strategy, you probably. Traditionally, a lot of the councils, you've probably got a headroom there that you've got to allow for off the top before you work out your debt capacity.
Yep. And I'm aware in Wellington City, for example, this has been quite a debate in their debt covenant, what headroom. And we've been challenged on the 15% buffer, where that came from.
Yeah.
And I can't really answer that. I mean, kind of made it up.
Yeah.
It seemed reasonable, but I don't know if it is or not. So,
well, I mean, look, we're into insurance strategy territory, and that's when you come down to modelling, and Ken's more of an expert on that than I am. But I mean, you would logically, in your insurance strategy, somewhere do some level of modelling to try and determine it. Without talking Wellington's business, Mike, of course, the problem there, in contrast to what Ken's saying is here, is we can't buy enough insurance. So there's an insurance underhang. So the headroom is real. The headroom is real there in terms of, and hence, you know, the well publicised debate over sell shares and create a fund, yada, 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 yada. But it does become a really important part of your financial strategy. And again, it goes back to climate change. Not that necessarily climate change leads to a disaster, but it can be a cause. Have we got the arrangements in place from a debt perspective, an insurance perspective, a knowledge perspective to be able to manage the situation, including what I'm saying now is that it would appear to be something of a precedent for some of those additional costs that come with disaster. And I'm talking red sticker. And actually, if we got subject to flooding, and I think we had a bit of water here, schemes which protect houses, which also cost as well. Andrew.
Yes. So my understanding is, and Ken, you can help me on this, but the 15% was just a pragmatic kind of number. But I mean, the fact is also in the next 3 or 4 years, we are struggling to actually achieve the 15%, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, that's something, you know, it's a risk-based approach to your financial strategy that you want to be, you know, that I'd be able to think through. So we can, that's food for thought. Okay, look, in numbers wise, we'll come back to CapEx with Sharon a bit later on, which seems to be going well. And I noticed in terms of most other things from this report, Ginny is always good. So that's probably was the key things I took out. Have I final round of questions for folk? Mike, you go, okay.
I don't know if I've come to meet the organisation or the organisation's come to meet me, but I agreed with every single word in here, so I've got no questions.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well done, well done. This report has been written entirely how to beat Mike Montgomery. So, Ginny, well done. Brett should be prepared to move. We received the report. Thanks, Mike. Do I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Andrew. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you, Jenny. That's incredibly helpful. So now we're into business resilience policy and framework, with the view that we look at this, provide comment, and then show it up to council. It doesn't sound that elegant, does it? We move it, that it goes to council. Thank you.
Again, I'll take the report as read and wish to highlight the following. There's minimal change to the policy as per the highlights in the document. The framework is a new document. The intent is to streamline our documentation for clarity. The framework replaces a number of documents which will now be archived. This is a continuous improvement response as our maturity increases and we test our processes through real events. The purposes of the framework is to provide a foundation for business resilience at council. It takes a holistic approach to ensure that responses will be at the appropriate level and consistent. The crisis management playbook is also new and intended to be a practical tool during an event. This will continue to evolve over time. The next phase of the improvement program and refresh will be updating the business impact analysis and business continuity plans, and will then complete a tabletop exercise later this year for testing the playbook and BCPs. And basically what we've got is what we're doing in practice now with CMT. Happy to take questions.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Very interesting to read this and really look inside the bowels of the organisation as to what you do in any particular event. And I've been thinking about some of the ones you've been managing over the last few years. Folk, do you have comments or questions? Yes, Mike.
Just a quick.
Oh, sorry, Mike. I've got Mike first, then you, Luke.
Thanks, Bruce. Hey, look, I really liked the playbook. Okay, I thought I thought the playbook worked for me. I read that one, yeah, this would actually work in a crisis. I just had one question, and it's around the crisis manager and where they sit in the organisation, and just whether that was sort of appropriate. Because currently the crisis manager is you, George, isn't it? And you sit outside the exec team. And I just had this question burning away in my head. Is that appropriate? And is a crisis manager going to recognise a crisis if they're not right at ground zero of what's happening in this organisation? So, yeah.
Yeah, I do believe it's a little bit hard to talk about yourself, isn't it, in that role of crisis manager. But yes, I do believe where I reside in the organisation is effective. I'm not on the executive team, but I do sit at the executive table. So I am fully aware of what is happening across the full organisation. The other component too is that the executive team are a full invite to every crisis management meeting. So it is at their discretion in terms of what they attend and what they input into and what they will add value to. The other point that I would make too is that the crisis management is also a skill set. So it's very much based on ability to quickly facilitate, see the wood for the trees, and tease out decisions in a very fast way from a cross group of people. So there's a number of aspects to it. There's awareness, yes, of what is happening across the organisation, but there also is a specific skill set that the role really requires to be effective.
Okay, so, and I hear what you're saying, that the exec team are a permanent invite to the crisis team. It's more the other way around. Because I've been part of organisations in the past where crises have developed, and I observed from the outside, it looked like it took them a day or two to even realise they had a crisis, because the person with the crisis brain who understood the system and was thinking about it, they weren't there early enough. And so it took them a day or two to recognise they had a crisis, I think. So that was just my comment.
I think, sorry, I just respond to that, Ken, before you jump in. I think it is a really good point, and I think it's also about full organisational awareness, because often these things are brewing from, they're not necessarily coming top down, they're brewing bottom up. And so it's about, and this is where the framework, etc., when we do our education process across the organisation comes into play, so that people are aware of what is a crisis, what might be an emerging crisis, what are the characteristics, and therefore if I think I'm seeing one, what do I do about it? So it's really an education process as well.
Yeah. So through the chair, look, I support everything that George has just said there. In effect, actually, I think that last point, George, was very relevant. So George, in her functional role in terms of organisational excellence, is working right across the organisation. And actually, I believe over and I guess you're talking about something that's been road tested over the last 5 years, right? The COVID thing happened 5 years ago now, and really what you're seeing in that playbook, I guess, is sort of developed up, from our COVID experience, as well as other things that have arisen over that time as well. So we've kind of road tested it. It works. In her organisational excellence role, George is working across the organisation, and I believe we have really developed up a culture of awareness, and who do you call when things start getting a bit off. Off the normal tangent that you'd expect. So so look, I'm fully endorsing George in terms of what she brings in that space.
So my final comment on this is I tried to imagine any crisis developing that the playbook couldn't come up with one. Everything I could think of, I could point to one of your playbooks, pages, and I was like, yeah, got it covered. But George, your point about crisis often is a ground up thing. Something happens and it cascades. So just leave that hanging there, whether it's appropriate, or just that the crisis manager has to know enough to recognise what's happening in the organisation early enough to do the job right.
Mike, Luke.
Yeah, sorry, I want to raise the question of civil defence.
No,
Okay.
sorry, your microphone's not on.
Sorry, that turned off again, sorry. No, about civil defence, we have to work collectively with civil defence because we're replicating a little bit of what they're actually there for. And we've got a lot of staff right in this area actually involved in civil defence quite heavily. And what I'm saying here is that we have trained people to go into a lot of these operations already that are actually there from trained controllers, etc., which we don't want to actually replicate again. So we've got to be aware when we're talking this risk management of people that are professionally in that area to recognise those risks. Personally, not at business level, but the backside of this is that under the current legislation, the government is going to demand that we as territorial authorities have resilience. So what I'm saying is that it's important that we actually progress this ahead, but we do it in coordination and cooperation with the already existing agencies.
Yeah, I've worked closely with Dave with this. And from our experience with COVID, when the EOC was stood up and we had CMT stood up, it worked very effectively, and particularly by having someone come from the CDEM space into our briefing every morning, and we deliberately timed it like that. It is civil defences, the EM guys are very much the external facing, and we are keeping the lights on internally. But obviously there's overlap, and we're also very cognizant of the skill sets of people. And it's one of the reasons that, for example, I've done a lot of function training, is because that builds our knowledge in terms of responding internally as well. So yeah, we do work very much hand in hand. And if CMT is activated, Wayne attends very much and has that, or is this getting to a stage where maybe we should be standing up an EOC for some reason?
Yes, I got that continuity between something which is, if we put it that way, purely in-house and requires your crisis response versus something which grows bigger and clearly the skills of civil defence is there. Okay, cool, that's good. Any questions, guys? Yes, Carol?
Just a comment, it's great to see this playbook and it's great to see all of this. And, you know, you talk about practicing the scenarios. I think that's where a lot of learning comes. But as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to have those alternate contacts, because in any given event, often, you know, people will be away. So really love what I'm seeing here. Thank you.
Brilliant. Don't worry about my questions, pre-questions to you. I think we've got it good. Except for one, if you go to the framework on page 15, as I said, I've probably done a boy look here. I probably started with the diagrams, Mike, as we discussed before the meeting, and I just couldn't. I think conceptually I understand it. The continuity response in the middle of that plan, prayer, response, recovery cycle. I didn't feel like I found it easily explained what that was. I could make a fair guess as to what it is, but I didn't see it particularly I didn't think well explained inside the framework, and I just wonder if that's a small comment about what could be done. Because if you look at underneath, it talks about 3 phases, which is plan and prepare, response, and recovery. But we've got this continuity response in the middle of it, so I didn't know quite what that was. I'll leave it as a comment. You don't have to respond to that. That's fine. Love the playbook. Read that, and it, like you, Mike, made sense. I couldn't think of any situations where I would want to go.
There will be some.
Pardon?
There will be some.
Oh, absolutely. So you had to think about. Well, I mean, it's a good point. So I had to think about in reading that playbook, Andrew. Could this accommodate something we can't think of, but actually has the flexibility as a system? And I think it does. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Brilliant. Can we go to the recommendations then, please? Go way back, because it's a multifaceted recommendation sitting here. What page are we on for the recommendations? Pardon? 36. Oh, right, gee whiz. My one problem with diligent, unless you can tell me how to get around it, and probably I need a training on it. Okay, we received the report. We review and consider the managing business resilience at Waipapa, which we have done, we have reviewed and considered. We have also done the same for the framework, and we do refer both documents to council for endorsement. It's implicit, obviously, in that we are endorsing this too as a risk committee, which is great. Do we have a movement a second, please? Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Mike. Any discussion on the motion? Being none, I'll put it, all those motions, I'll put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Righty. G'day, Janice, how are you? Big report, first one, well done. It's really good read. So I'm in your hands, please.
So I'd like to highlight the following key points. The majority of the improvement programs have now been rebaselined to reflect the more realistic delivery of resource diverted to the LTP waters and other competing projects. The 2 remaining programs will be rebaselined as resource becomes available. The process mapping currency piece of work is progressing well with the new software being tested. Another key point to note is the risk management follow-up audit is planned for the next quarter. Happy to take questions.
Thank you for that, Janice. So we are happy to take questions. Folk want to make comments, please? Yeah, go for it, Mike.
By rebaselining, you mean rescheduling, right? Yeah. And so I went back to 6 months ago, I think, to 2 audit and risks ago, and we had a nice little spreadsheet basically showing the black blocks of when things were happening in the calendar year. I take it, you've done that, you've redone that, but I haven't seen it. Is that right?
Are you referring to the audit plan or the committee plan?
Internal assurance plan. I believe there was a little spreadsheet. Took a photo of it actually. Sorry, am I wrong?
Oh, no,
Tell me who I am.
no, I don't think you are. So there are 2 plans. So one is our strategic internal audit plan, which is what Janice is referring to in regards to the risk management maturity that's scheduled for this year. And then the other plan is Janice's internal assurance plan. That one.
Internal assurance.
Yes, that one.
That's the one that's been rescheduled, right? Oh, no. Okay, so
No.
I'm misunderstanding.
Yep. So every strategic audit internal audit that's been done has an improvement plan as a consequence. So, for example, on here that if the business continuity management gap analysis, as a result of the audit, it has an improvement plan, which has a number of actions over generally a 3-year period. What we've found is due to constrained resources, we're having to just rebaseline those and put something a bit more realistic in place. Does that make sense?
It does. Sorry, I'd slightly misread that to be the internal assurance program had been rescheduled.
Yeah. Cool.
That's Mike.
Too many plans.
Yes, well, that could be true. We're in local government land, aren't we? Any other comments, questions? Like, just a couple from me, please, Janice. I'm very interested in the legislative compliance management report, believe it or not. It says go live mid-March for new process map software. So I think that's flowingly, is that right? Yeah. I've learned this phrase from other councils as well. It's in my mind. But I think I saw somewhere that actually the full completion of it would be June 2027. Is that right? When does this project actually end? So you're gonna buy flowingly, or you bought flowingly. You're going to reprocess. Presumably, people get trained on it. When can we expect comfort that we are complying with the law, which must be the objective of this exercise?
Yes, the project will be implemented and we'll be working with staff to get their current process maps accurate. And that's part of what we've been doing with the project. So the long timeline is to continuously have those process maps up to date, but it should be sooner than that timeline.
Brilliant. Look, one of the things that will be important when I look at this, and that's fine, I take the point that it takes some time, you got it mapped out, which is cool. But I'm always thinking we have an existing need to understand that we're complying with the law. And the real set piece will come in our planned September meeting. I think if I've read the audit plan correctly, when we're going to be looking to recommend to council to adopt the long-term plan. So this may not be for you, Janice, but it may be somebody else in the organisation, George, which is when it comes to the letter of rep, and we're recommending that Susan and Steph signed a letter of rep that we have complied with the law. What comes out of a legal compliance program becomes really important, because otherwise we don't know. So I'm making a meal of it. So I guess the real question is, great, this is going, it's structured. How will we have confidence come September 2025? George, looks like you're about to break into song.
Yeah, or something. So I guess there's two things we're talking about here. What Janice is talking about is having our key processes across the organisation documented and that they're up to date, so that we can be really clear about the controls and stuff that are in place around those processes. So we're putting in the new software to better support that process and as a trigger to refresh. As well as that, we have our comply with software, which is where we do our annual attestation in terms of our compliance with our legislative obligations. So that in terms of our normal cycle, the results will come up to you prior to recommending to adopt the annual report. So you can use that to help inform your decision. Does that make sense?
Look, I don't know enough about comply with, but that sounds like we're running two systems for the same outcome.
No. So Flowingly is just a process mapping tool. Yep. Comply with is where staff attest that we are complying with legal obligations, two completely separate things. Comply with doesn't map out council's processes. It just says you are obliged under this piece of legislation to make sure that you've done this, and this, and then we attest against that. Yeah.
So in fact, it's not either or, it's both, is really what you're saying, because obviously we want to make certain we have got appropriate processes internally around complying with, not to confuse it with the product. And then we've got the benefit of comply with to ask the right questions and get that reporting. Okay, that's cool.
And they're all processes, all key processes, so not just our legislative processes, but all processes. Yeah.
I think the other thing to remember too is the legislative compliance improvement program processing, having accurate process maps is a key part of it, but there's also development of training and some other streams that do continue on.
So look, two other really quick questions. I don't know if it's really one to debate. I was interested in the asset management planning work, which seems to be struggling. Given in effect, Andrew, we've had it here for a number of years, and there's a challenge within the organisation to get on top of it. And I'm not being critical. I understand the challenges around all of this stuff, but I've already heard from Brad today that he wants to incorporate something. Oh no, sorry, climate change. We want to incorporate it into our asset management plans. This speaks questions. What are we putting that good information into?
So what?
Oh, Dawn. Sorry, I didn't see you hiding over there. Sorry, Dawn.
Wondering if you can help with answering that, please.
Thank you, Dawn.
Kia ora koutou, and I absolutely agree with the sentiment in terms of the concerns that we haven't been able to progress some of those actions. I mean, some of them we have, certainly the development of our strategic activity management plan for the organisation has been a step forward. In terms of the work, we recently undertook a maturity assessment. But we fundamentally do have the challenge in terms of we've been on a cycle of developing our activity management plans for LTP. So while we discuss in terms of the challenges that we've had in that space, that has flowed through. So those people in activity management plans have not only had that dual obligation and responsibility for supporting operational activities within council, they've also been updating, renewing apps for quite a long time without that normal cycle of shut off, right? Doing it that sort of the breathe, the review, the start, and really getting right down into those improvement plans. But you're right in terms of the context is changing for a lot of our activities at the moment as well, legislatively, operationally. And so those things are taking priority. So as we learn more about climate change, those are the components that are flowing through down into the AMP. So it's not like nothing's happening, but it's not necessarily a direct relationship to what was identified in the KPMG report that work that's being undertaken. You know, we're required to respond to the legislative things, the government policy statement for land transport that changed dramatically. Those are the things that are equally taking priority. So I absolutely acknowledge in terms of that we've had a work plan that we haven't progressed. But, you know, and when we think of that wider context, I think that, you know, it's able to be explained, but doesn't, I guess, answer that question of concern.
Thanks for that, Dawn. Appreciate that. And hopefully it wasn't too uncomfortable a question. I suspect, Janice, this is something for us with Dawn and you to return to after the LTP. For the obvious reason that actually the infrastructure strategy is, you know, which is sort of the pinnacle, if you will, of I would have thought of asset management planning. We're going to have had it externally verified through auditors. You guys will have a chance to debrief on the quality of the infrastructure strategy, where it's leading. And I can see here the very real points that Dawn's made, which I take as entirely valid, which is the pressure of it. You'll also have had a decision made around Three Waters through consultation and developing a water service development plan. It would seem like a good time to perhaps try and draw all those strands together to work out really what is the next steps. Now, Dawn, by the way, you might well have that in your mind, and I'm sorry, but I think it would be good for that to be transparent in front of this committee, because bottom line is we still know asset management planning is pivotal to the new council as well as to us in our existing form now. Thank you for that. One other final question, Janice, please, if that's okay. And it's really just about how we relate to customers, to be honest. So we've given ourselves thumbs down on building consents and land use and subdivision consents, and we miss by a matter of one or two. But for that one or two, that is really important, right? And I take this one on board. What is the sort of, here I'm trying to focus on customer service. Do we explain, do we debrief, do we talk with the applicant when in fact it's going to miss the deadline? How do we deal with the customer so that it's I'm not going to say it's not an appropriate experience, is what I'm trying to say, and preserve trust, confidence, reputation of Waipa? That may not be a question you can answer, Janice, it may be somebody else. I'm just interested to know.
Yeah, I think this would be a good question for you to ask when the building compliance report comes later in the agenda.
Okay.
So if we could just hold it
Yeah,
to
fair
then and
point.
they'll be able
Yeah,
to
thank you.
respond to that.
Good call. Okay, I'll do that. That's wonderful. Okay, look, again, Janice, thank you very much. You can see there's actually a lot more probably I could go to on this one, but again, thank you. It's starting to give us a good sense of being able to have a reasonable discussion, because after all, my need is to try and gain assurance that key controls around our risks are being managed. So on that basis, I'm going to move that we receive your report. Over a second, please. Thank you, Carol. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Well, it's morning tea time, but I'm not going to let you out. Can we go to vested assets, please? You know what I'm doing here, Ken.
I do.
We need to keep our time going if we can. So we can move to the vested assets, please. That would be good. Janice.
Sure. I'd like to highlight the following key points. So the audit was completed in response to the timing issues with the vested asset process, resulting in prior period errors identified in the last two external audits. The progress is relatively complex with a number of teams involved. While teams were completing the various parts of the vested asset process, the end-to-end process across the various components was not well documented or understood, resulting in the gaps. The two key recommendations is conducting the end-to-end process and connecting, the end-to-end process and allowing a 7-day for the asset information officers to request further information before the 224 is issued. A mini project team has been formed and is progressing these recommendations, and all parties involved are on board. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Janice. Yes, this was a vexed issue, wasn't it, for our annual report process last year? And when you look at the report, you can see why. Okay, folk, do we have questions? We've got a, yes, Carol.
Look, thanks, Janice. I'm really pleased that you've undertaken this piece of work, and it's great to see some strong recommendations. You touched on that the teams have bought into it, because I'm very conscious it's across lots of teams. How confident are you of being able to embed it?
Really confident. They are all already quite keen to get making progress and to work together, and are all very excited by the process. So I think we're quite confident, and we will do assurance checks to make sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? This is all good news. I mean, we're learning a bit. Did my head in trying to understand the system, but it does reflect. Well, I mean, it gives us an insight into the organisation that this is a cross-organisation need. And so, in fact, dare I say it, I know this was a bit unhappy because we've got raised by auditors, but actually this is the benefit of an outside pair of eyes looking in. So my only question, Janice, is I'm happy to, the results will be pretty obvious. We have either got it right or wrong in a matter of months. The detailed findings and action list all have good, sound dates, and they are coming up this month or next. Are you confident those dates will be met? Because we need to have them in place if we're going to meet the auditors happily for 30 June this year.
Yes, very confident. The project team are already making great progress.
Brilliant. That's great. That's great news. Okay. And I'll be glad I don't have to look inside the system for vested assets again, I hope. Okay, so the motion as we received. Do I have a mover in a second, please? Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Carol. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Right, I'd like to move on to the audit plan, which is in draft. So I'm very grateful that we do have it in draft, Ken. Gives us a sense of where we're going, and the resolutions obviously allow for you and me, Roger, to clear this one out when and as time allows, which is tremendous. So we aren't with auditors today. Renee's on leave and Kay is otherwise organised. So Ken, I think the floor is yours, and we can take it from there, please.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, it is really unfortunate that that audit had to give their apologies for the meeting today, because normally they would obviously speak to their plan, because it is their plan. However, yeah, in the interests of advancing this, because time is of the essence. Yeah, we are very fast approaching an end of a financial year. Yeah, look, I think it's important we do we do still consider this item today. So look, yeah, as the chair has noted, the plan is in draft, and it is particularly in draft in regard to the timing of the audit. So you can see a whole lot of TBCs to be determined, or sorry, TBDs are they, to be determined in the time frames. However, what we have been speaking to Audit about for some weeks now is the importance that we look to actually have our annual report audit done, completed, opinion given, and adoption by council before the end of the triennium. So we have been speaking to them about that. They have made very positive noises about having the resourcing in place to be able to achieve that. Yeah, but I guess that's just something we need to continue working through to change all those to be determined to achieve a timetable that works for that. Yeah, we are pretty confident from our own internal resourcing that we can get them the annual report in time to achieve that. And in fact, in past end of triennium periods, we have been able to achieve that. So yeah, that's definitely the intention. Look, in regard to their focus areas, I don't think there's any great surprises in that space. Assets are definitely something that they're very focused on in a whole range of ways. This year will be quite a big year in regard to revaluations. So you will see page 131 of the agenda. You'll see a little table actually at the bottom of that page that talks about when our last revaluations were done for various classes of asset. And look, we have So we have a normal 3-yearly cycle for operational land and buildings. You can see it was last done in June 2022. So therefore we are scheduled to do operational land and buildings June 25. So part of this year's audit. The same with the infrastructure assets that are noted immediately below that. The same in the sense of those we generally have a 2-year cycle. And of course they were last done in June 23. So our number is up in regard to the Three Waters assets and the roading infrastructure. So those are due as well. So look, we have 3 very, very major classes of asset, our entire infrastructure effectively, plus our land and buildings that are all due for revaluation this period. So quite rightly, that is a focus area for audit, and obviously will be a focus area for our team in regard to getting those valuations done and all the accounting processes related to that and into the annual report. Okay, so so look, that's probably the main thing I was going to speak to in regard, or the main things I was going to speak to in regards to the audit plan. So as the chair has pointed out, the recommendation makes provision for chair Bruce and deputy chair Roger, to basically do the final acceptance of this this audit plan, agree the final content of the plan, because just because there are still some matters that still need to be addressed in regard to it. But Chair, I'm very happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
You can see I was looking at that box as well about what was going to get revalued. Roger, you want
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Ken. You know, in the past, in recent years, when we've had a revaluation, probably on those dates, then the revaluation resulted in a little bit of pressure on the annual plan or LTP, whatever it was at the time we were discussing it. Given the fact that there are 3 revaluations being done that cover a high percentage of our assets, what's your perception of the kind of impact that will have on the financial plan, the annual plan? Or it will be an annual plan review because we will have just adopted the LTP.
Yeah. So look, so Roger, great question. Look, I guess as a very big part of preparing our LTP, our draft LTP, which obviously we're looking to adopt by 30 June of this year. A very big part of that is obviously to make some assessments in regard to what's going to happen in terms of valuations of key assets going forward, and of course the flow-on impact into depreciation, etc. That's a focus of the team. It's also very much a focus of audit that we get that depreciation number as as best we possibly can. Obviously, revaluation processes do impact that. All we can do is estimate, estimate to our best ability, what the impact is likely to be, and make provision for that in the long-term plan. So that's what we've done. Of course, when this actually lands, when the revaluation exercise is done, is at 30 June, there could be some ups and downs there. In fact, there will be some ups and downs there. Any estimate is always going to result in ups and downs. But look, we've made the best provision that we can.
That's the answer that I wanted to hear. That even in the development of this LTP, you've made a best guess estimate at what the impact of that revaluation would be on years 2, 3, 4 of the LTP. The other thing with the Three Waters infrastructural assets, I'm assuming that the discussion and the input of our data into Waikato Waters Done Well assumed a revaluation of the assets in that discussion, or was it traditional valuation?
Yeah, no, it would have actually been picking up on the same information because the financial modelling for in regard to Three Waters, CCOs, etc., was very much picking up on all of the constituent councils' LTP information. Okay, and in regard to some of those councils, obviously that was those were signed off LTPs. In Waipa's case, it was very much a draft LTP. But all of that financial modelling that was done for the Waters CCOs, picked up on LTP stuff. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for that, Ken. Look, and I was exactly the same thing. Could I just recommend to the team, it would be good to talk with Renee about what her basic line of testing is around the valuations. Quite correctly and professionally, the audit profession's approach to valuations is substantially upgraded from what it was in the past. And we've already had a discussion with them last year around contract rates. And they're going to be interested to know what contract rates the valuer takes on board, information take out of us, etc., which makes just the prosecution of a revaluation a wee bit more challenging than anything else, let alone the point you're making, Roger, which is that somewhere down the track there could be implications for a future annual plan, depending on what comes out of here. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that, but I just think it would warrant close alignment for Yolanda's team to know the principles behind which Renee and her team will be approaching the valuation, because it's about covering things off. Can't help but feel, by the way, I mean, all valuations are always under review every year through a fair valuation assessment, Roger. But I think your Three Waters will be fully tested if you go into, subject to consultation, into a Three Waters entity. Because I could tell you now, any director worth their salt on that company will look at your valuations like anything, because they want to know what they're taking over. So look, that's cool. Ken, look, the other thing in principle is, and I hear your point, well made, we've always delivered, and so we're going for a pre-election sign-off, and that's tremendous. And that makes that September meeting great if we can actually achieve that, which will be superb. I know from elsewhere there's a whole lot of resourcing going on around the country for our auditors in terms of how they meet these things, but hopefully we can hold our line. The only other thing I'd note is there's a lot more information in here around the materiality in which non-financial performance measures look at, which is actually really important. Again, I professionally want to hold out the value and importance of financial measures. I'm glad that they're going to put the borax on us, wrong word, but you know what I mean, on all these areas, because I am very conscious and amongst your risk assessment, Jenny, of the changing environment. I am conscious that the current government may well, not for this obviously, but enforce on us benchmarking, in which case our approach to both financial but also non-financial systems will be really, really important. So I'm glad that we've got that from Renee as well. Okay, so look, I don't sense any other comments or questions from folk. So it does quite rightly. So again, Ken, thank you to you and Yolanda and Renee, if I can have that on record, that actually we do have a draft, albeit it's not final, but that also then leaves it that on your behalf, Roger and I can clear out the final and recommend to Susan that she signs. I think it's Susan, or it might be Steph. Can't remember who these days signs the audit plan. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those? Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Roger. Sorry, were you about to say something, Ken? Sorry,
Bruce. Probably should have said, I'm not actually sure that nowadays there is a requirement for anyone from our organisation to sign the audit plan. However, clearly it is something that does need to be agreed. So so I think they will reissue this with the dates involved, and we will make sure that that both of you gentlemen are happy with that, and then we'll just signal that we're comfortable. But I don't think there is actually a formal sign-off.
Oh yeah, Roger, you and I hold all the power. Okay, we've got a motion. I think Carol, you moved it and Roger, you second. Thank you for that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Brilliant. Right, we are at the time for morning tea. I think it would be good to have a short break. We are trying to keep things speedy if we can. How would you guys go for 10 minutes? Brilliant. So we are at 10:20, so we can be back just after 10:30. That would be really grateful. Thank you.
We're not quite on yet, but.
No, we are now.
yes,
Thank you,
we are.
Zoe. Appreciate that. Okay, so in making our progress, time to look at the outstanding management report matters. Ken, please.
Yes, that's fine. So I will, Yolanda just can't make it to the meeting today, so I'll cover off on this one. But look, nothing has actually dropped out of the report this time because, of course, things drop out when on the basis of a management report provided by Audit saying the item is cleared. So you'll be seeing some very familiar items here. There are a few that have been outstanding before the 23-24 annual report, and then obviously there's a whole bunch of new recommendations that have come into this table on the basis of the 23-24 annual report. There are a few items here, and you'll see them like on page 153. There's a few items here where we're saying no further action proposed, like our feeling at the management level is that this has been adequately addressed. I mean, essentially, we're basically propositioning that to Audit in terms of actually we think that next time you look formally at this and issue a management report, you should clear these items off. But of course, they need the chance to look at those and respond. But I guess it is heartening that several of these, management actually think that these issues actually have been addressed to an appropriate extent and can drop off. So look, I think I might leave it at that, Chair. I'm certainly very happy to take any questions. I guess I should point out page 153, obviously, completeness of vested assets is on there. You've seen how we're looking to address that, to remove that issue with the process review that Janice has done. Perhaps back a page 152, the timely review of additions and disposals to property, plant and equipment. Now this is essentially council created assets rather than vested assets from developers. It is unfortunate that Yolanda's not here because she could talk to the work that we've done in that space to tidy up those processes I guess in a fairly similar way to what we've done in the vested asset space. I don't believe we had too many issues in that space last audit. But that is something obviously we need to be mindful of. It's something that Audit put a very strong focus on, making sure that we are capitalising our work in progress on as timely a basis as possible. So looking open to any questions that you've got on any of those matters, Chair.
Thanks for that, Ken. Folk, questions, comments? Yes, Roger?
I think just the assurance that Ken has just given that those two urgent items are being progressed as we would anticipate them being addressed. So that's good. Thank you.
I was just keen trying to check. So matter progressing, when I read all the responses and indeed the dates for which they would be concluded, I presume, essentially we're looking for a pretty big movement off the schedule once the auditors have done their interim review, I guess, in effect, right?
Yes, correct. Actually, in terms of that date, the March 25 date, I guess that is the date of the most current update.
You're optimistic.
We have updated them all as of March 25, as in right now for the purposes of this report. Look, I think it's more Chair that where we say matter progressing, we acknowledge we've still got more work to do. Where we say no further action proposed, we actually believe that there is no further action that needs to be done.
Great. Well, that's positive. And again, thank you for the approach that's been taken. I mentioned the interim report. Look, it would be normal committee and I think I saw that in the arrangements letter from the auditors. When they do an interim audit, that's pre-balance date, which will be actually pretty soon, even though we're still dealing with an LTP. You'd expect them to be kicking these off and knocking them off that we've actually got them done. So it's a good sign. I've always been confident that between you and Yolanda that you're taking active interest in them, and that's what counts. I'll move from the chair. We received the report. Thank you. Question of your right.
It's just a matter of interest here. If Audit come back and don't agree with us, what happens then? And we've got a standoff.
Sorry, can I speak?
Yeah, go for
Look, from a committee's perspective, our rebuttable presumption is that we take these recommendations seriously. If the auditors made the recommendation, they are worthy to implement. I'm always open to a discussion with management not to implement. But the discussion you have then, Roger, is one of risk. You know, if the auditor says you should be doing X, they'll be saying it for a control reason, which is to ensure a transaction goes ahead in a certain way. Because that's what all these controls are, just that we repeat the treatment of the transaction the same way, same time, it gets into the right place in our ledger and we report well. If we choose not to, and that could be a valid situation, we need to understand why would we say no? But it's rare, but I've been in situations where I've agreed with management that we don't agree with the auditor. And if that's the case, we have to agree to disagree. They will always come back and say, well, you know, let's say we said, look, our vested asset process is fine, you know, go away. And we thought it was worth the risk. Well, they would have all right when it comes back to this order, if it's wrong, have a crack at us. But we have to have that discussion. It's really what it comes down.
So sorry, the ultimate situation would be if we really disagreed, then they would qualify the report.
That's right. Yes, that's the other thing, you know, if it was affecting the balances that we have inside the annual report, look at what, bottom line is we treat it seriously and we'll be looking to have further discussion with the auditor.
Just on that, Bruce, because we're kind of in that position with the road smoothness performance measure.
Yes,
and so I see that hanging around.
Yeah.
We've discussed it. What do you actually do? Do audit and risk go to council saying, we've discussed this, we've haggled it, well, we've discussed it with the auditors. We make a recommendation to ignore, or is that the best process? And then council would say, we agree?
Probably in the long run, but I think actually now that you raised the road smoothness one is you know a position where we believe they've got the right information. This is why I'd like them to make certain, or would encourage them to make certain they clear off these on an interim basis, so that by June we know actually our position that there is no further action to be taken is reasonable. Okay. I think it's credible. A good question, Roger. We are taking these seriously, but all I'm hypothetically saying, I could get to a position where I might disagree, not disagree, but I might not see the relevance of the recommendation. I think with this one, Mike, I agree with you entirely. This is one we believe we've done the right work. So it'll be very important that we get a view from the auditor on that pretty early in the process, because if it's not, we are going to have a discussion who's right and who's wrong, because it could come back to your point, Andrew. They could qualify, but it also could be that we need to have a further discussion if there is a lack of clarity.
Can we ask that discussion takes place before our next audit and risk meeting? I mean, can we ask of the auditor to come back with some?
I'm loath to tell the auditor what to do, because actually they should do what they believe they need to do, Roger. I'm just reflecting on what an auditor professionally does, which is they review systems and processes, which I would assume includes our outstanding recommendations at an interim basis. I'd take that on advice. Look, I think the answer has got to be yes. They've got to look at those. They've highlighted road smoothness as a key item in their audit plan. So I'm making an assumption that would be the case. But if they choose to do it late in the piece, we've got all right to be very unhappy. I mean, there's good evidence here. We think we've got the right stuff. They read the minutes. They understand it. So if they were to come back at the 11th hour and say, well, actually your road smoothness measures are wrong, I think we'd have grounds to be a wee bit grumpy, because it's an issue last time we've shown what we've done. They should come back. They should look at this early. Unfortunately, Roger, that would be a good question if we actually had Renee in the room today, but for good reason she can't be with us. So Ken, it might be that actually just through Yolanda, we just raise with them that we do want them to I mean, I'm saying informally, do what you're after, Roger.
Mm.
Just reflect, this would be good to know that we're on track or we're off track.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so we're back to persons prepared to move receipt of this. Thank you, Andrew. I'll second that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
You moved it.
Oh, did I? Oh, okay. So you'll second it. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, again, those against, it's carried. Thank you very much. Righty, we're into the long-term plan. Thank you, guys. I suspect you got matchsticks in your eyes at the moment, trying to keep awake. Thank you. Look, appreciate your time here, you two, and I'll leave it in your hands to brief us, please.
Perfect, thank you. Good morning. So this report's providing an update on the risks identified for the 25-34 long-term plan. So as detailed in the attachment to the report, there are 15 risks still outstanding. Since the last ARC report, 4 risks have been closed. These are representative of basically where we're at in the project, sorry. So these risks have been closed either due to there's no uncertainty, so we've either got a decision on those or they'll be wrapped up as part of our business as usual work. 7 risks remain at very high. These are detailed in the report, but I will hand over to Kirsty to provide a bit of a verbal update on those.
Thank you.
Morena Koto. So I would like to focus on the very high risks relating to the not achieving timeframes and the related risks around audit expectations and waters. The audit of the LTP consultation document and supporting documentation began on the 4th of February, and in accordance with our project plan, we are scheduled to receive audit clearance this coming Wednesday, the 12th of March. This timing would enable us to present reports to council meetings on the 19th of March, and then to be able to seek approval to publicly notify the LTP consultation document and the consultation document for local waters done well. Those consultation processes for the LTP and local waters done well are scheduled to begin on the 21st of March and run through to the 21st of April, with hearings and deliberations to follow. And adoption for both the LTP and the water services delivery model is also scheduled for late June. Wish to advise you that the timeframes for reaching these key milestones are at extreme risk, and there are consequential impacts for both the LTP and local waters done well work streams. The environment in which we're working is incredibly complex, and there is a high level of uncertainty. We've prepared the LTP with 3 waters in for the full 9 years of the plan to ensure that we're fully transparent with our community. And Audit New Zealand has challenged our approach, putting us on notice that they may issue a qualified audit for the LTP consultation document and the LTP. As at today, this issue remains unresolved and the impacts are significant. The council is making 2 separate decisions under 2 separate pieces of legislation, following 2 distinct processes. Under the Local Government Act in respect of the long-term plan, and under the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Act in respect of the water services delivery model. These 2 processes are being undertaken in parallel. The council is planning to make its substantive decision on its water service delivery model after the LTP has been adopted. In doing so helps us to avoid any predetermination of the outcome of the separate waters consultation and decision-making process. We've obtained legal advice from Simpson Greeson to help us ensure that we follow robust processes. And we've shared this with Audit New Zealand some weeks ago. Simpson Greeson has also undertaken a review of the waters section of our LTP consultation document. We understand that Audit New Zealand have engaged with the Office of the Auditor General on this issue, and they have attended 1 meeting of the Opinion Review Committee. We're advised that they are working to have a second Opinion Review Committee meeting scheduled
and hope to be able to do that this week. However, no date has yet been confirmed. It's acknowledged that Waipa District Council is not alone here, and you may have seen reporting last week in respect of South Wairarapa District Council, which was issued with an adverse audit opinion, having also included waters in the LTP for the full 9 years of the plan. Aside from the issues around inclusion of waters, there are a number of other issues that are still being worked through with Audit New Zealand. Just at a high level, the most significant of these relate to development contributions revenue, the doability of our capital works program, and then I guess in response, there are consequential impacts on our infrastructure strategy, our financial strategy, and our consultation document. The HOT review has been deferred 3 times whilst these issues are worked through. And Audit New Zealand, as at today, are not able to commit to a date for HOT review until all outstanding issues have been fully resolved. Audit have advised that they do not have a team available to work on the Waipa audit available this week. Wish to provide assurance to the committee that the team are committed to prioritising work to make best efforts to meet the timeframes for both the long-term plan and for local waters done well. We are also considering possible options for contingency planning. However, noting the high level of uncertainty that I've referenced, that means that what we're able to do at this point in time is somewhat limited. Both Melissa and I are happy to respond to any questions. I'm sorry, I'm going to hand over to Ken, who's just going to provide you with an update specific to the bespoke debt to revenue covenant. Apologies, Ken.
That's fine, Kirsty. Hey, yeah, so look, in terms of the bespoke covenant, so yeah, so look, we were approved with a bespoke debt to revenue covenant of 350%. That was approved at an LGFA board meeting. Very late last month. We've received an email indicating that that we were approved, and actually Tauranga City were approved alongside that. They've indicated that publicly that we've both been approved. What we are waiting on, however, is a letter from the LGFA just setting out some conditions in regard to that approval. Now we've had indication of what those conditions are. We're comfortable that those are appropriate, but we are just waiting for the for the documentation on those. I have had indication late last week that we should receive that through today, at which point we'll be able to share that with elected members. So just waiting on a piece of documentation really to confirm that fully. But in regard to the covenant, the bespoke covenant, it is applicable. It is applicable from 1 March. So it's actually already alive, and it's right through to the end of 2034. But look, among the conditions are that obviously if the waters activity exits the business with the debt associated with that, that they will review at that time. So yeah, so open as long as waters is still in the business, will be reviewed for good reason at the time that waters exits the business. Otherwise, it's there for the 9 years. So it does well support our LTP, the way that we've done our LTP at the present with as Kirsty explained, waters in for the 9 years. The bespoke covenant well supports that position.
Thanks for that, Kirsty. Makes it interesting how to have a conversation now, because obviously members, most of you, I think all of you were online last Thursday when we needed to indicate to you the perhaps it feels like running through mud. I don't know, one of those sorts of dreams where you can't quite keep up the pace, and this is going back, and without trying to make fun of it, the critical message that you've given us, Kirsty, is the high risk to the timetable at the moment without an easy plan B, for which clearly I don't want to put this as a blame issue or anything else, but clearly I think we are in a position this week where we're waiting for the auditor to return to work in effect, which is gives a small window for us to make certain those issues thereafter are nailed, although we've probably already nailed them, I suspect, Kirsty. But equally, we are in the hands of the auditor to try and eliminate the uncertainty with which you good people down there and you, Ken, are suffering from at the moment. Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's frustrating, isn't it? Because it's really out of our hands. We're just waiting on central government and their agencies to come back with some determination. I think the irony of the situation is that on either of the two scenarios, whether it be with 3 waters in or with 3 waters out, year 1 of each plan would probably be exactly the same. And so it makes no difference in terms of our telling our community what's going to happen next year in terms of rates is going to be the same thing. It's just the documentation or the future plan that supports that. And so I think, you know, in this public discussion, I just want to let our community know that really we've done everything we can to progress this so we can get out with a consultation document and give them the assurance of what's going to be happening for next year. So frustration, understand that it is difficult for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, thanks. You know, maybe someone can explain this to me in better detail, but I guess my understanding is whether we have waters in for the full 9 years or whether we pull it out after 2, the auditors may well still say that they're not happy with how we, you know, our presentation. And look, I totally get that. And quite frankly, I don't see a qualification due to our long-term plan having waters in for the full 9 years. I don't mind that. I would be quite happy with that, as long as we have the opportunity, which we do, to make it clear to our ratepayers and our whole population, in fact, you know, why that qualification is sitting there. I guess I'm a bit more concerned, and I wish to understand the issue around DCs.
Is that something look, I think at this point, Andrew, what I'd like to say is things like DCs, capital doability, infrastructure finance strategy are ones which you might say are an ongoing conversation. What I've asked Ken and the team to do is to see whether we could have some time with Steph in PX this afternoon just to talk through what at the moment appears to be an issue, but tomorrow may not be, you know what I mean? So I think it would be useful not to have that discussion in public, quite frankly, but to have the chance for good reason to do that with Steph under PX. So I'd say don't lose that question. It's a good question, but it's one, you see, even the 3 waters and outers, we're speculating, we don't actually have our auditor here. So I think at this stage, I'd like to suggest, unless there was, and Roger, I like your point, and I also like actually your point, Andrew, I wanted to perhaps put my oar in here as well. In light of this uncertainty, the critical thing for us is what is the right debate to have with our community? I want to say something which professionally I don't, but it's almost irregardless of the opinion. Let's make certain what we're doing with the community is right by us and by them. I would hope that we can convince the auditor that it's also the right way to go, but that's the aim. Okay, any other comments or questions, guys? You're on the side, you understand where we're at. Look, this is a moving feast. I can't ask you what the plan B is. You've told me you haven't got a plan B, and I don't blame you, Kirsty, at all. We'll have to wait and see over the course, actually, of this week when our audit director is back to see how that might go. Yes, Kirsty?
Through the chair. So look, I mentioned that there is a high level of uncertainty. We are meeting later today to talk through some possible scenarios as to whether we're able to meet that 19th of March timeframe. If not, what other options might be available in terms of getting before elected members? What does that mean for our consultation processes and timing? So we are looking at possible options. We just can't provide any clarity at this point.
Brilliant. Carol and then Roger.
Kirsty, you mentioned earlier about the legal opinion, and I think just for clarity, it's important that everyone appreciates that the documents have been prepared based on that legal opinion with the audit in, haven't they?
So through the chair, thank you. Yes, that's correct. So as well as the legal opinion, which has informed the development of the consultation document and also helped to guide, the process running in parallel with Local Waters Done Well. Simpson Gresson have also undertaken a legal review of the waters section of the consultation document for the LTP.
And on top of that, to go back to this higher level point that we're discussing here, it's exactly that opinion and our proposal to include waters. We're arguing that an OAG, Audit New Zealand, could help a lot with certainty, even though there are other matters which we can discuss later, which they're also asking from an audit position. Because in the long run, it's the inclusion or non-inclusion that is giving rise to the primary qualification challenge with the opinion. So we're just asking them to recognise they have all they need to do, we think they have all they need in hand to make a decision over whether Three Waters in or out is going to be an issue. Roger.
Yes, thank you. Through you again, Mr. Chair. And one of the questions that I asked earlier on, which gave me some degree of comfort on the impact on our community, was what would happen if we didn't make the time frame. We couldn't go out with a consultation document, and hence we didn't have an LTP that we could adopt as from the start of the year being the 1st of July. And I was given the assurance that in fact what we would be allowed to do, which was actually relevant last year as well when we were talking about the enhanced annual plan, is that we're able to fund the operation based on current year's rates and adjust it at a later date if the LTP was then confirmed subsequent to the 1st of July. So in fact, there would be no impact basically really on the continuation of services to our community by Waipa District Council. So that gives me that level of comfort. And again, it's just a hugely frustrating situation, but giving our community that comfort that there is a way forward.
Thanks for those comments, Roger. I wonder if we could move to the resolution, please.
Well, Bruce, could I just
Sorry.
one very brief comment? I think I want to publicly acknowledge Kirsty and Melissa, you and your teams, and that there is no slight on your, what you've done, that this situation has arisen totally outside your control.
Yep.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I can just acknowledge that this has taken a lot of input from across the organisation. It has been a cross-organisational effort. And whilst there is a core LTP planning team, there has been input from a large number of people putting in exhaustive hours. So we are better together. We've proven that. And thank you for your acknowledgement.
Yes, look, and here, Andrew, I suspect in passing, a very simple one that we received a report. We are in fact acknowledging the hard work of these folk and Ken and team. Okay, so I'll move from the chair we receive. Roger, thank you. You'll second that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. And look, I think it goes without saying, while we'll have an appropriate discussion in PX, we will keep elected members informed. I'm not quite certain where the next one is, to be honest, but it'll be a watching brief, I suspect, somewhere towards the end of the week somehow. Rightio, so look, let's move on to a closeout report, which is tremendous. Melissa, I asked for this, and I think you probably were going to do it anyway, but a good news story, really, I think. Go for it.
Thank you. Yes, great news story. So this report presents the closeout for Ahuaki Waipa Community Spatial Plan. So it is reflective of where the project is at. So the hearing was held just before Christmas, and then deliberations were at the end of February. So we're looking to adopt the plan, which has been a long time in the making, at the end of the month. So on the basis of that, all the outstanding risks, of which there were 5, have since been closed. But happy to take questions.
Brilliant. Comments, questions? Yes, Lou.
Definitely not a question through your chair. Just to congratulate everybody. Well done. Great job. And, as I say, so I'm happy to support that.
Thank you, Lou. Any other comments folk would like to make? Right, that's brilliant. Well, well done. I mean, I asked for this, and you folk have honoured me by, how long has it been, Melissa? Is it a couple of years?
3.
We
Is it 3? Somebody's saying 3. Too long. I don't know.
The project proper started in 2021, but I think in terms of our reporting, it's probably been 3 years of reporting through to this committee.
Well, thank you for your faithfulness, both of you, in reporting and fulsomely too on the project. Our role obviously is to see its progress and project risk as in contrast to the policy. But I do appreciate the way you've kept us all up to date as well. So it is a great day that we're able to say job well done, and we don't need to bother you on this one again until you want to do a new spatial plan. When's that? Don't answer that question. Don't answer that question. Okay. Would somebody like to move that we receive the closeout report? Thank you, Carol. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Lou. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, you guys. That's great. Now we're at lunch, but are we able to keep going at this stage?
Yeah, too early.
Can we just?
Can we have you, please, Sharon? That'd be great. Thank you. So we'll just hold the update on the building consent monitoring, for which I need to remember my question, don't I? Oh, I do. That's right. I have now. G'day, Sharon. How are you? Another person probably with matchsticks keeping their eyes open. Is that right? Yeah. So look, Sharon, thank you for slightly out of agenda, but just for good. You said, can we deal with the local water done well first, please? Is that okay with you? Brilliant. Okay, so we're moving to item 10 in our open agenda. Thanks, Sharon.
Okay, so the local water done well risk report. So currently we have 6 very high risks for this project, largely around community timeframes and those sorts of things, making sure the community is kept informed. So I suppose the timeframe one is coming to fruition, is probably becoming an issue. So we are running alongside the LTP. Our plan was to go out with consultation alongside the LTP, and still is. We're still going to do that. Just those dates may be moved out accordingly. So just working aside that, and obviously working close with the LTP team on that. The other risks that we did have on there in regards to Waikato Water's done well was like the timing and that and fitting in with those other councils. So just a bit of an update there. During March, Otahuanga, South Waikato and Taupo are working on their options for consultation. So they've got reports going to their councils in regards to their preferred options. And then during April, Matamata, Taupo and South Waikato are doing their reports, with Hauraki doing theirs in April. So there's a bit of a timeframe, but everyone's working towards that 30th of June to have completed their consultation process and their preferred option confirmed for their water services delivery plan. So obviously working closely with Waikato Water Done Well and the other councils and sharing information where we can so that they aren't duplicating. So happy to take questions on those risks.
Thank you. And obviously, again, the critical thing here is this is not the place to make decisions over policies about direction of travel. It's actually over the risks in your report, which is fine. But thank you for that update as to where some of those other councils are at. So folk, do we have questions for Sharon on her report? Yes, Roger.
Yeah, sorry. I think I might have misheard. Could you go through which councils during which months are actually putting it to their council?
So this is draft, obviously, and like it's obviously subject to
Yep.
change, but this is what I know this morning from what I've received from Waikato Water Done Well. So during March, workshops, Otrahonga, South Waikato and Taupo, they're holding workshops with.
Like Taupo holding a workshop.
They've got a workshop
Right.
in March. And then they are doing also, sorry, so Taupo are also doing their report in March as well. So that those councils have got a workshop followed by their reports going to councils on their preferred decision option for consultation. And then during April, you have got consultation is basically planned for pretty much everyone with the exception of Hauraki, who's looking at doing consultation in May.
Thank you. I'd heard you say Taupo in both March and April, and I didn't hear the distinction about workshop and putting it to council. So thank you for that. We've had no indications at all as to which way councils are trending in their thought.
No, so basically all of these councils have signed their heads of agreement and they're now working through that process that we were working through last month.
Sharon, it almost follows on from Kirsty's and Melissa's report that actually this is one leg of this bundle of LTP and essentially consulting on the water services delivery plan. It's that latter bit. And clearly the time for us is coming soon where we need to talk to our community, but I suspect our community are probably talking already. How difficult, hard or easy do you think this consultation will be with the community? And I reflect on that because if I look at probably the second last risk on your schedule, for instance, it's the perception issue of a CCO going to the community, and we still have a very high residual risk. So believability, trust and confidence, capacity to be able to engage becomes really critical over this issue.
Yes, it does. I might just get Lisa to respond because she's obviously heading
I think
the
like
comms,
a comms person walking the room. Okay, good one.
in this direction, but yeah.
Yeah, so absolutely take your point, Bruce. It is a very complex topic. We have been through a similar process with our local water done well consultation document as we have with our LTP consultation document. It's gone to Simpson Grierson for legal review just to make sure that there are checks and balances along the way. Waikato Water Done Well, so the 7 councils have been working together in a comms approach and messaging as well, and a lot of it has been CE led. So a lot of the key messaging has been very well tested amongst many audiences just to make sure that we're hitting the mark in terms of understandability. I think it will be, this will probably outshine the LTP, I think, in terms of community feedback, because it is something that everybody relates to. It is a service that they touch every day, which is kind of a little bit different to our LTP, which is highly focused on our financial situation at the moment. So I'm pretty confident that our community understands the issues out there. We have done a lot of pre-engagement in the lead up to this consultation document and some education, but it would just be whether or not they're satisfied with the level of information that we provide, given that the PAA is very much around less is more and focusing on that proposed option.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that. I do see it as pretty significant in terms of with the community, because of course we're projecting ultimately here communication, which is about the long-term view about what makes best for the community. And that's when the numbers become eye-watering, particularly in terms of water charges. So it's going to be a critical messaging time. And I'm only telling you how to suck eggs here, obviously, when we go to consultation. So the work that you're doing is absolutely critical. And I agree, by the way, I should have thought of that clearly in line with the other councils. So there's a common message going out. Roger.
Yes, that last little comment that you made there is a relevant consideration from how I'm looking at it. And perhaps a question of Lisa, the timing of the consultation document for Three Waters, with the exception of that one council that's going in May, will we know the outcome of the other council's decision before we go for consultation? Because if there is a possibility of 1, 2 or 3 councils deciding not to go for Waikato Waters Done Well, how will that impact the messaging in terms of the feasibility of the waters entity going forward?
So just to answer part of that question, so if we stick with our current timeframe and going out for consultation on the 21st of March to the 21st of April, those councils won't be making that decision until within that timeframe. So there's no decisions being made on their preferred options before the 21st of March.
We won't know.
We won't know. They're not making any decisions before the 21st of March.
Well, that in itself is a huge risk, isn't it?
So the legal advice has been, Councillor Gordon, that we make it very clear within the document that some or not all of these councils may sign up to Waikato Water Done Well. However, you as a decision-making body should be aware of the outcomes of the other councils before you're asked to adopt the preferred option to inform the water services delivery plan.
Yeah, Roger, can I just make a suggestion here? This is true of any multi-council consultation. So I reflect on that we are, and this is why I agree with Kirsty, by the way, over the long-term plan. We have to go out with genuine consultation, which clearly has some conditions around it. And even if you all went out on the same day with the same proposal, consultation democratically could still come up with a different answer. It's the decision that will be made presumably around about June, could even be July, as you prepare your water delivery services plan, that is going to be the real arbiter of whether what size is the coalition at the Welling. And that's the problem, even for those that might be going to, and I'm thinking, I suspect Wellington Water is probably going to at the same time on the same day, but even that still has to lead to a democratic process for which all might be in, some might be in. So I think we just, it is a case where we clearly want to keep an eye on the whole game and where the other players are at, but actually we're getting to a point where we have to run our own course and then come back and see where everybody's at, I guess. So be well aware, but recognise we're in a process that we need to rock through. Any other questions, comments on this one? Very high risk is really what you're saying, residual risk for this whole baby. Yes, Lisa?
Bruce, can I just add, we have planned probably what is our most extensive consultation approach that the council's ever seen, given this is the biggest decision that we've had to make since 1989. The difficulty that we've got at the moment is we're having trouble booking things in, knowing where we are within the audit process. So there is a bit of a risk at the moment, particularly if we look at pushing consultation out and we start hedging into those school holidays, that Easter Anzac period, when we know that a lot of our community will actually leave the district for holidays. So we're just trying to work around that at the moment.
Which is part of the contingency planning you're doing this afternoon. I can get that, which is actually probably a new risk on this from the project perspective. Not that you would have known that when we did you did the paper, so that's fine. Okay, that's really helpful, folk. Do you have any other final questions for Lisa or for Sharon? We haven't. In that case, can I look at the recommendation, please, which is that we receive Sharon's report. Do a move and a seconder, please. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Roger. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Look, we talk about these risks. I presume these are known at council level as well.
Well,
No problem at all. Okay,
that's
good.
a critical thing, I think.
Okay, Sharon, are we able to move on to the capital program, please, which would be great?
So our capital program report, so currently we are working on 125 budgeted projects across service delivery and community services groups. Spend at the end of January was close to 60 million, with another 63.5 million that's actually been committed through our contracts and professional services. So through the October forecast process, we deferred around 50 million into year one or future years of the LTP. When we did that, we looked at the risks of doing that and assessed all of those by each project and put mitigations in place so that we could manage those. So those risks are being managed. Through that process, we left enough money in those budgets to ensure that we could carry on with our planning and our design this financial year to ensure that we're ready for construction next financial year when we've got those budgets available. So significant discussions were held around those and we were confident with what we've put in place there. You will notice that on our KPIs that the renewals are showing as being off track for 25-26. This is largely due to that deferral of stormwater work renewal program, which was the Moodoo Street works. So again, we're currently working on that and that'll go out for procurement prior to the 30th of June. So hopefully get that procured and that contract awarded early. And there are other renewal delays, the water treatment plant and wastewater pump station renewals that we have deferred to next year as well. Again, on the assumption that it was okay, there wasn't a great risk involved there and that we will spend those budgets next financial year on that renewal program. So happy to take any questions on those current risks.
Thank you for that, Sharon. Yes, Roger.
Yeah, thanks through you, Mr. Chair. The unfortunate situation where we had to defer some of the capital, you've obviously been out and you've talked with all the major contractors that have got work in progress. Can you give us some feedback that you got from the contractors, and does it suit perhaps their market conditions to actually accept the deferment of that capital? Or what was the kind of response that you got?
So I think the biggest one that we did defer was the Wells Place reservoir, which we actually had up on Getz, and we took that off Getz when this came about. So we took it off, we put a notice up on Getz and we notified our contractors early. It had only been up there for a week and notified them that that would be going back up early this financial year, early next financial year. We also put up onto Getz, which is our tender website, when we're planning to procure works, so that the contractors get notice of when the works will be going up. So currently we're putting up those notices for tenders that we know are coming up towards the end of this financial year for next year's work. So we're keeping the contractors as informed as we can do. We've still been able to award like our water renewal work, our wastewater renewal work. We might have changed the scope and reduced it a little bit, but we've tried to keep what we can going. and any contracts that were awarded are still being progressed. So anything that we had commitments against did not get deferred. It was more those ones that didn't have those commitments, and largely growth projects, to be fair, and land purchases where again, we haven't held up, that we try not to hold up those land purchases because we need them to build the infrastructure, but property are having those conversations with the developers now so that we're ready to purchase early next financial year so we don't get that hold up.
Right, so that was my question, and I appreciate that you were keeping them up informed as much as possible. It was just whether you were getting any feedback from the developers after they'd received the information.
I haven't heard of any negative feedback from them.
That's important. Thank you.
So for my clarification, you knew I'd go for the red one, which is renewals, which of course is actually just maintaining what we've got. What I'm hearing you say is that even though we've deferred a substantial chunk to 25, 26, which always makes you then worried about your capital program next year, you're actually, if I've heard you correctly, Sharon, you're still doing the planning work and the ability to commission that work now, so that effectively when you get to 1 July, the funding year, you can rock in straight away, more or less.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not asking for a 1 July contract, but in effect, that's what that's how shall I put it, mitigating the risk that all we've done is push out jobs next year, and we're faced with an impossible task, correct?
Yep, so there's multiple procurement plans and contract documents and RFT documents currently being worked on so that, yeah, we can ensure that we're up and running for next year's program.
And without it, because it might be you want to raise this more in PX, but to sort of semi-follow Roger's point, the contracting market is still out there. They're coming to the party for these contracts. We're not struggling to find contractors.
No, the ones that the tenders that we have done, which to be fair, we haven't done as many as what we've been normally doing, but the ones that we have done, we have had multiple tenders, had multiple people coming in and tendering for them.
You say you haven't done as many as that because you're doing direct procurements?
No, that's because of obviously pushing stuff out to
pushing
next
okay,
year.
Yeah, no, good.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Okay, that's brilliant. Folk, any more other questions for, yes, Mike?
Just a minor point, really. I've been wondering about the appropriateness of reporting against original targets when at the 4-month reforecast, we deliberately changed the targets. And so from a governance and accountability point of view, it kind of feels a bit pointless, like the red box, you know, it's like, so yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts on that? From a governance point of view, I'd rather the up-to-date targets. Maybe from a public accountability point of view, I'd maybe have the annual plan targets, because they're kind of serving different purposes.
Yeah, so I suppose the KPI is based on the annual plan, but there's probably no reason why I can't include into this graph what our current forecast is so that you can see how it's tracking against that as well. It's not hard to do if it's, because I agree it's probably is more meaningful, so.
Yeah, I agree. So this KPI was established some time ago, and it was really the key was, are our planning processes robust, was really the driver behind it. But having said that, there's no reason why we can't change tack to what might be more meaningful.
I never want to complicate these things, but you want them to be as useful as possible. So I'm just asking the question. I don't know which is best.
How are you funding the renewals?
Sorry?
How are you funding? That might be more a question
Depreciation.
for you, Ken.
Yeah.
Depreciation
Yeah,
funded.
so from reserves.
So yeah, so obviously any depreciation money you're not using will be going into reserve to fund in future years. But yeah, I can more than happy to put in the forecast onto this graph as well, and then you've got that comparison with both.
Sorry, the point that I was raising there, Mike, is just actually your annual plan does set a position with your community, including its funding. And arguably your renewals should be, I mean, we say reserves, well, the reserve is created because you've rated for it, but you haven't spent it. And in the year you rated on your annual plan, not on any reforecast. So the critical thing there is, are you carrying the surplus through, arguably, that surplus into the new year so you can fund the renewal? It's different when it's debt funded because all you're doing is holding back, taking on debt, but renewals, you're primarily funding out of your rate account. So there is argument to have our cake and eat it too, which is keep our eye on the annual plan, but recognise the smarts that actually from a management perspective, we are managing to a different number. It's always the complexity of the way we fund our capital. Okay, that's a very helpful discussion. I don't think there's anything else. Carol, you're the CFO in the room. Is there anything you wanted to add? Well, you're one of the CFOs in the room. Is there anything else you'd like to add, given your experience, particularly to Mike's question? Sorry, I thought you might have a view. I've given you my view, but you can countermand that totally.
I think from a transparency point of view, it is really important to go back to what was committed in the plan, but equally from tracking how you're going against the latest. So, if it's possible to do the two measures, I think would be ideal. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Sharon. I wonder if we could go to the resolution, which is that we receive Sharon's report. Do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Carol. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, is carried. Sharon, I hope we are trying to push through our agenda. We're going to see Dave and they're going to move into PX and do the minutes. So if you're happy to hang around, we'll try and deal with you before lunch, if that's okay, please. Dave, welcome from the sidelines there, mate. We're going a reasonably good clip today, so I'm sorry if you feel a wee bit caught out. Don't take a deep breath and welcome to the meeting. Dave, I'm Bruce Robertson, the independent chair, and I've been introducing Carol, my fellow independent, on the right-hand side here, but I presume the rest you know. So it's great to have you here, and thank you for coming over, I think from Cambridge, to talk us through the salient points of your report and the IANZ audit. So I'm in your hands. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the staff made an undertaking to provide a 6-monthly update to the committee, and this has been taken to continue to implement the recommendations of the IANZ audit and to create
Actually, Dave, sorry, could you just hit the microphone button beside you?
It should be green, mate.
Sorry.
Green to go.
Yeah. Did you want me to start again?
Yeah, it'd be good, mate. Yes, please. Because we are being live streamed actually, Dave. So it'd be good.
Yeah, apologies. I'll start from the top. So at the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 10th of June 2024, the committee received a report from the IANZ assessment, audit and outcomes. Staff made an undertaking to provide us 6-monthly updates to the committee on steps being taken to both continue to implement the recommendations of the IANZ audit and proactively identify and address other issues ahead of any future audits. Since the June report, a further audit was also undertaken of Council's territorial authority roles, building functions outside the consenting process. I'll just move down through this. So at the biannual audit in September 2023, IANZ was satisfied that Council's response to all the non-compliances were addressed. A surveillance audit was to be undertaken in September 2024. However, IANZ determined that the detail of the responses meant that this was not required. A final audit report was issued on the 6th of March 2024 and has been attached as Appendix 2. To ensure similar matters would not reoccur and to encourage continuing improvement, the following steps have been implemented. A senior quality and support officer position has been filled, partly dedicated to specifically the management and auditing of building consent quality manual and quality assurance. An internal audit schedule has been created, 28 process audits and associated process amendments completed, new processes implemented where necessary, 35 continuing improvement opportunities lodged and reflected in training plans where necessary. Audits as part of the move to Alpha 1 to objective build have been completed. The move of legacy consents into objective build for consistency, and a new audit schedule created for the new year. Happy to take any further questions on that.
Thanks, Dave. Whenever I look at an IANZ report, it always seems so exhaustive and exact.
We've got another one coming September this year.
I don't know how you manage it and handle it. Roger.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I've only got one question, and it's just an interpretation. What is a legacy?
Legacy, sorry, yeah. So legacy are consents which have
gone past the 2-year mark where a CCC hasn't been
Oh, okay.
issued. So we make the decision whether to issue a CCC at that stage. If no information has shown us that the building work complies with the building consent, we'll likely refuse the CCC, and then it moves into the legacy category. So those consents that weren't originally submitted through our Alpha 1 portal, which was rolled out in 2019, that customers now have the opportunity to come and approach us at customer service, and we'll lodge them through our new objective build portal and help them through that process. So it keeps all the data and collection together and allows them to use the online platform.
Good. And my next question, if I could, we are at some stages using external consultants in building consents.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that our quality audit process actually covers those external consultants that we're using?
Yeah, so all external consultants have to operate under our own internal quality assurance manual. So they're audited in line with our internal auditing process, similar to employees.
Okay.
So they're treated effectively as
There were
employees,
consultants,
yeah.
but did I not see where we've got a 3 authority agreement for using staff from other authorities to issue our consents as well?
Yeah, so we've
So
recently.
that's not a consultant which you've got control over, but staff of another organisation.
Yep.
Do we have control on those staff?
Yeah, so similarly with external consultants, anyone that processes or inspects for us for another BCA, the contract that you're talking about is with Otaronga and Waitomo. They come under our quality assurance manual and similarly are audited and managed and respect the quality through the same processes as if they were employees. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, yes, Mike.
Did I hear you say we've got another IANZ audit this September?
September, yeah. We haven't got the exact date yet, but yeah, September.
And how are you feeling ahead of that? Do you need to complete anything, or are we there already?
Yeah, we're on track, quietly confident, but they're ever increasing the bar. I look forward to these because I think they're an important part of what we do and keep everyone accountable and make sure that we're delivering the service that we're required to. Yeah.
Have you got any particular project or program in place to meet that September review?
Not as yet. Our general audit and audit schedule sort of covers that and leads us into a pretty good position coming towards it. So yeah, they effectively audit us to our processes and procedures in relation to that. So wherever we sit at the time they come and audit, they review it based on that.
Can I just check? Because in our, if I've got this correct, oh no, I might be reading the wrong one. Were we due for one in September 2024, a re-review or whatever they call it?
Yeah, the special assessment.
Yeah, but they didn't do that because they were happy with the response that you guys made to date, correct?
Yeah, we got really good feedback from our responses and the closing off of our I think 6 general non-compliances and 1 serious non-compliance. It's going back a wee while now. I think that's it. Yeah, and effectively.
It was 6 and 1, I think, going by the report.
Yeah. They made the decision that we were under good management and our responses were of that they didn't see it necessary to come back again.
Well, I must commit as an overall control, I took a lot of confidence out of that actually they were anticipating doing a review and they decided your response was good enough. We'll keep away and go back to a normal cycle.
Yeah.
So
I've been through a
that
number
was
of
almost
these.
sort of slam dunk for me. Well done, guys.
Yeah, I haven't seen that before. I've been through a number of these before, and it's the first time they've decided not to come back when they've said.
I think that's a good sign, personally, Dave. I think I might have seen it before, and I think actually when I saw it, it was actually really, really helpful to see that as being, a great response out of the Waipā team. So well done. Dave, I had a question which actually arose under our quarterly risk report, and it was sort of. You've got a difficult job in my view because you're a regulator. I've been an auditor, so an audit's like to have to give bad news. And I'm interested in the sort of the customer service relationship. On the whole, consents are coming in, you're getting them out in the 20 days. And I think we saw the numbers, you're at 99%, whatever. So there's always the 1 or 2 for whom actually we don't get it within the 20 days, and again, there'll be probably all good reasons, how does the customer interface work in that situation? What I mean to say is, how do we make certain that Waipa is seen as fair and just, but also conscious of service delivery? Because here I am as a consenter not getting my consent, which I want, and I think I should get it within 20 days sort of type thing. How does that work for your team?
Yeah, so we've got really strong communication channels within all our teams. So those consents that would have gone over 20 working days, that wouldn't have come as a surprise to the customer. They would have been actively engaged throughout that process. I think one example is the Hamilton International Airport. I think that was issued on 21 working days, for example, but there was significant consultation through that process and some challenges in relation to part of the design which we had to work through in order to be able to issue it. So in short, it is a real balancing act in terms of our service delivery and being a regulator, but we constantly ensure that we're engaging with our customers through that process so that there's no surprises.
Brilliant. No, that's what I was hoping to hear. That's great. Thank you for that. Sorry, I was sort of slightly off piece there, given we're talking about Nian's audit, but I was just interested in customer service. I sense we've got no more questions, folk. This is a good news item. Well done, and deep appreciation to your team and yourself, Dave, for the response to an audit, knowing that they always keep coming around, and it looks like there's one coming up. So all the best. Got a person prepared to move I'm the wrong one. Prepared to move. We receive the report. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Mike. Okay. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Just remind me where I'm up to. I'm not missing one, am I?
No.
I'm up to afternoon tea. No, that's right. So no, it's good. I just want to make certain I'm in the right place. Was it Hamilton? I tried to jump over another paper to get there quickly, Carol. I think I'm known to do these things. So look, we need to move into public excluded, please. And we have the resolution there and the reasons why. Thank you. Happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Lou. Any need to discuss the motion?